So yeah, so while the candidates want to come up and take a seat, we're gonna start with Miss Rachel Roberts.
Are we playing musical chairs?
They would say that to me.
Like dead on.
You didn't think
Well, I did, but like it didn't resonate.
Yeah.
It's like the shoes, the
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Ready?
All right, hi everyone. How you doing?
Good.
So it is my understanding that you all have chosen to be here of free will after school when you could be almost anywhere else. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. I love your democracy shirt, and so thank you all for being here and caring a lot about democracy. So this is sort of a rarity that you have this many of us who are trying to run for office right now, or actively running for office right now, in front of you. So well done to people who have organized this. I think this is actually the biggest panel that I've been on of people who are currently running. So that says a lot. My name is Rachel Roberts. I am your Democratic State Senate candidate for this district. The district is comprised of Pendleton, Bracken, and Campbell counties, which is pretty big. So it's about 125,000 people, most of whom live here in Campbell County. Now, all of you who are sitting out there, are you all eligible to vote? Can you raise your hand for me if you are of age to vote? So some of you can't even vote, and you're still this actively engaged, so that's even more impressive. Well, I will tell you that personally, I voted in every single election that I have ever been eligible to vote in, and voting is one of my favorite things to do. I look forward to getting the I voted sticker every time I get to go, because I know that in the ballot box, we are all equal, that my voice is my vote, and that my vote has real power. So I encourage you to vote, and even if you can't vote this time, educate yourself about it. Kentucky's sort of funny. In Kentucky, we like to call things differently than everyone else. So, we're not a state, we're a commonwealth. We have judge executives here, which other places don't necessarily have, and magistrates and things like that. So even if you can't vote this time, pay attention to the sheet you have in your hand, what was up here before, and start to educate yourself on what those jobs are, and then look for the skills that you think are needed to complete those jobs. And then when you go to vote, I would highly encourage you to never just tick the box at the top that says straight party, Democrat or Republican. Because it's your duty as someone who's civically engaged to learn what the job is and to learn about each person that's applying for that job. When you vote, you are effectively hiring or firing someone to represent you. And you wouldn't, in the professional world, just hire and fire willy-nilly based on whether you liked their name or what rank they were and on the ballot. So pay attention to who they are, what the skills are, what the job description is, and then vote accordingly. So for the seat that I'm running for, what's needed is someone who has the ability to be a conduit or a voice for their community. I'm a community builder and a community leader. Someone who can generate revenue for the state and understands how to balance budgets. I'm a small business owner who generates revenue and balances budgets on a daily basis. And you want someone who has an idea about how to create jobs and how to foster education in our state. Our state needs to create revenue so that we can afford the things we care about. How do we create revenue? We grow wages. How do we grow wages? We have an educated workforce. How do we have an educated workforce? We support teachers and public education in our state. Those are the main reasons that I'm running. I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thanks so much.
So next that we have up is Jason Kilmer.
All right, so I'm Jason Kilmer. I'm running for state representative here in central and southern Campbell County. That's from Fort Thomas to Grant Slick, more or less. And I'm not used to following Rachel still. She's incredible, so mine won't be as dynamic as hers. I got into this race based on public education. I have two young girls. Two young girls that I care about deeply. And that was the reason I got in. And then I'm still in the fight for working class people. I took these notes to change the subject quickly to get my mind off of it, but I took these notes about voter records in the last couple of years. So people aged 20 to like 26 or 30, they're the turnout here. Young people aged 22 to 30-year-olds. How many people voted, do you think, in the last two elections in this county? There's almost 5,000 people that have voted, that were eligible to vote in my House district in the last two elections, 16 and 14. Anybody take a guess? Juliana, take a guess.
1,200.
739 people voted on both 14 and 16. There are 4,887 eligible voters from the ages of 22 to 30. You guys are the next great generation. You guys have to vote. You have to. It's for us, it's for you, it's for our kids. Thank you.
So next on the list, we have Justin Fortner.
So I think this is the coolest thing that I've seen. So I graduated from Holy Cross in 2005. We had nothing like this. Nothing about local government, nothing about informing students who want to vote, or informing students who the candidates are. So I think this is really neat. Again, I'm an attorney, and I'm running for Commonwealth Attorney in Campbell County. I'm a Republican candidate. And really what I want to speak to you guys about is, I understand going from transitioning from high school to college, that you feel, a lot of you might feel lost, a lot of you might feel like your voice doesn't matter because most of the stuff in politics you deal with people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. And I'm here to tell you, your voice absolutely matters, just as much as everyone else's. And I encourage every one of you to vote, to tell all your friends to vote, and I encourage you guys, if you guys have any interest in holding public office, any interest in being an attorney, any interest in doing anything in the political world, start young, start now. We need a lot of young people that have a lot of interest and really a lot of kind of young leadership for this county. We need young people to come in and fill these spots because we all know that our parents' ages, and a lot of them are entering retiring stage. So I love the fact that not in here today, we have other candidates who are similarly positioned as me, who are younger, who are young professionals, who want to make a difference and want to make a positive change to Campbell County. So I encourage all this stuff. If there's one thing you take away today, it's that. It's not about Republican, Democrat, it's not about any of this other stuff. It's about choosing who you believe can help Campbell County in the future. So just a little bit about me. I do a lot of public defense work, and my entire practice is basically predicated upon defense work. I do state and federal stuff. I do bankruptcy. I do a lot of civil work. I work with a bunch of other attorneys on cases because I believe in passing back and forth ideas, because the only way we're going to get better is to sit down in a room to go over situations and cases and stuff with other people. And this is something that I am dedicated and I really want to do. Again, I grew up playing sports. A lot of you guys, I grew up with a lot of people around my class from Campbell County. And I'll just leave you guys with this. Don't ever if people ever tell you you can't do something, do it. It's about time we have a lot of young people come into the office to hold these people who are public servants accountable, because all of our taxpayer money comes from that. And I really believe in not letting people who have been elected in office get complacent. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, I will be free to answer anything you have. But thank you guys for being here today.
So next you have Michelle Snodgrass.
Thank you. So I am Michelle Snodgrass, and I am your Commonwealth Attorney. So let me tell you what that means. The Commonwealth Attorney is the prosecutor that is responsible for prosecuting all felony offenses that occur in Campbell County. And that's anything that's punishable from a year up till the death penalty. I have been in this office for 18 years. I started as an assistant trying smaller cases, basic theft cases, flagrant non-supports, drug possession cases, so that you learn as you go. You learn what it takes to be a prosecutor. You get your feet wet, so to speak. So as I had been there for a few years, I stepped up and I became the chief assistant under Jack Porter, who was then Commonwealth Attorney, and I started taking on more serious cases. Sexual assaults, drug dealers, burglaries, robberies, and my job was to be the voice for crime victims, for those individuals who could not come into court themselves, whether it be a child that had been sexually assaulted, who could not come into court, or someone who was murdered. I was their voice. Eventually, when Mr. Porter retired, I became Commonwealth Attorney, and I've been serving in that role for 9 years. And although it is really important to get young people involved, there are certain jobs that you need to know require experience. I have tried just about every kind of case that there is. I am the representative for the people of Campbell County. Because when a crime is committed, it's committed against our community, not just that one individual. So my job is to make sure that individuals who violate the law and who commit crimes are punished in the way that it's appropriate. I have a team that are experienced litigators who have handled just about every kind of case there is, and we've encountered serious legal issues, and we know what to do in those situations. Every day, we're in the courtroom fighting the fight for the people of Campbell County. Most recently, and in fact I was just at your forensics class earlier today, talking about my most recent murder case. So anything that I can do as well to take what happens in the courtroom and bring it to the classroom, to let you guys know that there are so many different jobs that you can do that would impact the criminal justice system. So sometimes you need to realize that there are certain positions where individuals need to learn it as they go, day in and day out, serving in the trenches. And that's essentially what my job is. Someone who is experienced, who's a good litigator and a trial attorney, and that's what I've been doing as your Commonwealth's attorney for the last 9 years. So thank you all for letting me be here today.
Next up, we have Connie Krause.
Hi guys, I'm Connie Grubbs. I'm your only Democratic candidate for a county commission seat, of which there are 3 in Campbell County. I want to thank you guys for having us. I think this is a really important event to get educated on who's running, and I think it's awesome that so many candidates decided to show up. So thank you all. I'm going to push back a little bit on the importance of voting, just for a second, so bear with me. Voting is extremely important, especially in local elections. But what has changed the course of this country over and over again? Anyone? Feel it? Social pressure, right? So social pressure has created that, has filled that void where voting can't always take that place. So I just wanted to say one brief word about that because I love you guys are the activists. That's awesome. So like I said, I'm Connie Grubbs. I'm the only Democratic candidate who's running for a commission seat. I think one of the reasons I'm running is that we need different perspectives at the table when we're looking at a local government. We can't approach solutions from the same angle over and over again. I think it's really important to have different voices at the table to come at creative solutions, and then we have those discussions and that debate out in the open with a lot of transparency. So that's one of the reasons that I decided to run for a county commissioner seat. All right? I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thanks.
Next up, we have Steve Pender.
Steve Pender is my name. I am County Judge Executive. I'm going to restore your faith in democracy a little bit here today. If you watch TV, you have less of that faith than you once did, I think, because the atmosphere is toxic. It seems like in all levels of government. It is not really that way in local government at all. And I would tell you that more important to the conversation in local government about what to do and how to accomplish it is whether you're interested in progress or not, and not whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. We are not in Northern Kentucky organized around one big influential body or city. We don't have a big city that eclipses everything else. We don't have a philosophy really that dominates in a lot of respects. So what we have are 300 or 400 people, I would tell you, that I don't see every day, but I see all the time, involved in dozens of different community organizations, political, civic, educational, and otherwise. People that give of themselves and their time and are in harness, generally having come to a consensus about what needs to be done to move us ahead and get us where we want to go. I'll give you an example from, or maybe 2 examples from just the last week. It's a big week at NKU. They had a dedication of the Health Innovation Center, which is a $100 million project that will shortly help with a new medical school in the state of Kentucky that will be housed at NKU. The next day, there was a groundbreaking for a $100 million project that is going to redevelop the front end of Nunn Drive. And you would have seen, had you been there, and I realize you would have been in school, that it takes hundreds of people to be involved to get something like this done. You need to get a legislative expenditure passed. You need the governor on your side. people from Northern Kentucky lobby for those propositions, and you wonder how local governments get involved and whether it all has to do with a legislative expenditure or not. The fact is there is a thing called a tax increment financing district that encompasses a big portion of the area that's being developed that the local governments participate in with the state governments to provide incentives, and about 60% of local revenues that are going to be shed out of that site are contributed back to build the infrastructure in the area. The Campbell County Fiscal Court got an $816,000 transportation grant from the federal government to put walkways and transportation links to facilitate student movement on the site. So there are lots of pieces to a puzzle like this. They all come together to the extent we're all interested and care about our community and work for its betterment. And I cite those as examples of things you need to do, and you need to do them. It is true that in politics, the strength and the direction of the discourse tend to go where the majority of the people will it to go. And there's been this huge bulge in the population called the baby boom generation. It's got a lot of the attention, a lot of the money, a lot of the benefits. Your generation is not just a little smaller, it is underrepresented voting wise, and it is just a very natural sort of human nature proposition that the politicians pay more attention to those who vote and those who give and those who are involved in the community. In order for you to have a secure and prosperous future, you're going to need to be involved to a much greater extent than folks just a little older than you have been. I'm right there with you, and I'd like to help. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Charlie Colton.
Thank you. Ms. Cooper, Coach Dad.
Yeah.
You here for extra credit?
So,
So, I thought so. I'm a retired teacher. Taught school for 34 years, 29 in the public sector, and 5 years for the Diocese of Covington. How I got interested in politics is with the smoking ban. How many of you smoke? How many of you smoke? I don't smoke either. But I stood up against the smoking ban because, in my opinion, it's a government infringement upon your personal liberty. That's how I got interested in politics. I don't smoke, I've never smoked. But smoking a cigarette, a Marlboro, or whatever, is a legal product. And I don't want the government going into a business that you own, that you put up your money for, and telling you that you or your customers can't use a legal product. That should be the choice for the business owner. And the free markets, which I believe in, will take care of the problem. My wife and I, we don't go to places that allow smoking because we don't like it. If enough people don't go to a business because they do allow smoking, the business owner will change their policy. Pompilio's restaurant in Newport, for example, my favorite restaurant of all time. They used to allow smoking. Now they don't allow smoking because their customers said they didn't like it. I think the government needs to get out of our life, not in our life. Too much of your generation and even some of the generation of young ones here look to government to solve our problems. We can solve our problems best by ourselves. I'm a conservative, you probably guessed that. But I'm running as an independent. And I'm running as an independent because the Campbell County Republican Party left me. They're not conservatives. They don't advocate for conservative principles. So I became an independent for this election. I haven't changed. I'm still very conservative, and I'll stay that way. I'm presently one of your commissioners. There are 3 commissioners and the judge executive, Judge Penry. All 4 were elected are Republicans, but I don't think we've passed a lot of conservative principles. While I respect Judge Penry and the leadership he's provided, the county, I think we have a different philosophy of the role of government. I'm a delegate, not a trustee. I've always voted based on principles, never on politics. I've never voted party line because the party said that's the way you should vote. Again, I've based it on principles. Being a delegate, although it's not scientific, I do ask my constituents how they feel about certain issues and vote accordingly. A trustee would be someone that knows what's best for you. Government doesn't belong to the three commissioners and the judge executive. Government belongs to you. That's why you need to get involved. We have a republic, actually not a democracy. You mean that, right? We have a republic because we elect people to speak for us. Democracy would be that if you had a card and enough people decided and voted that you shouldn't have that card, they would take it away from you. That would be democracy. We have a republic. And our Constitution is set up so we have individual rights to protect us against the government. If you go back to the founding fathers, that's how government was set up for us. I believe in protecting property rights and personal liberty. I believe in limited government. You look at that because I've run out of time.
Yeah, sorry.
So, again, I'm an independent. If I can have one last, I'm trying to gather my words to say this, but we have people representing you that don't even live in this county. That were chosen and they live in Kenton County. We have 92,000 people. I think we can find two. Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, Calvin Seidel.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Calvin Seidel. I'm running for Judge Executive. It's nice to have both of my opponents here. I know not everybody has the opportunity to speak in front of a crowd alongside their opponent, but I think that's important to democracy. Also important to democracy, and kind of why I'm running and also why you should vote in elections are part of this same thing. In 2005, I was a junior in college, and I was on the phone, this was before Facebook, I was on the phone with a buddy of mine, and I was complaining about George W. Bush, because that was popular to do back in 2005. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I said, why don't I do something about this instead of just complaining on the phone with my friends? And so I switched my major to political science, and by my senior year of college, I was running for city commission. This is my 4th campaign for office. I think it's important to do what you can to be involved in your community, whether that's running for office and raising your voice and saying what issues you think are important to you, or voting based on what issues are important to you, or being an activist for certain groups and organizations to make sure that they have the strength and the power to be able to have their message heard. It's incumbent upon all of us to participate in a society. Otherwise, we don't have a society, we have a group of individuals. So, a couple of the issues that I happen to think are important, and some of the things I'd like to see done in our county over the course of the future. I'd like to see us reduce our carbon footprint and work towards being carbon zero. I think that's a goal we can achieve. I would also like to see us do more to fight the heroin epidemic. I'd like to see more than one needle exchange center, and I'd like to see it be a permanent fixture instead of a mobile unit. I would like to see us have more treatment facilities in Campbell County. I don't think we should have to send our residents and our friends and neighbors elsewhere to receive treatment for their medical issues. And I'd like to see us do more for, frankly, the poor. We need to have better transportation, and we need to have more affordable housing options. Those are things that I think that our county can work on. And hopefully, if I lose, Judge Pennery, or in that case, Judge Coleman, take up those issues and make progress on them, because that's how this all works, is us working together and making our issues heard, and then making progress on them. So, thank you very much for coming and listening to all of us.
So now that everyone's had a chance to speak and you're able to hear what some of them believe in, and does anyone have any questions? You can direct it to general, or you can direct it to one particular person. Yeah.
This is for everyone. How do you feel your outside experience has helped you run your campaign?
And if you have the answers like 1:30.
Yeah. Your question was, why do I think I'm qualified?
Yes.
I was
How's your experience helped you run your campaign?
well, I'm a commissioner now. I was a school administrator, I was an assistant principal. Most of my career was spent at Bellevue High School. I was head football coach, athletic director there. So I've run budgets, school budgets, and hired people and fired people in education. But, and being a commissioner now, you know, I've had nearly 4 years' experience in our campaign.
Yeah. So I'm a first-time candidate. I've never done this before or anything like it. So it's been quite an experience. I have learned a lot. I have reached out to people in my community and in my network for help. The Campbell County Democratic Party has helped me put some of those puzzle pieces in place. But my background is in stage management, so I feel really at home in a black box theater. So I'm a stage manager, so I have a lot of organizational skills. I'm really good at using tools like Google Drive with Google Docs and all that stuff. So that's how I keep everyone organized. And I'm a people person. I work with local stagehands, I work with world famous opera singers and really picky directors. And I think working with all those different kinds of people and having us all work towards the same goal has really prepared me well for running a campaign and becoming a commissioner.
I'll answer. So, did we meet earlier
Yeah,
today?
yeah.
What's your name again?
Carly.
Carly, thank you. So I am Yoga Studios. So what that means is that I'm responsible for job creation. I have 20 employees for the studios and manage budgets. And I have to generate new revenue. So I know I talked to your class today, but earlier I was saying, if anyone wants to go into the yoga business, here's all you need. You need to learn how to teach yoga. You need a decent floor and a bathroom. Those are the only barriers to opening your own studio. So there are very few barriers to entry. So it's super actually competitive industry here. So in order to continue to grow my business, I've had to continually find new revenue streams and continually reinvent the business to keep up with the times. And I've been able to do that really successfully. My business has grown from 1 studio to 2, from 1 state to 2, from 15 classes a week to 50 classes a week. So that's a lesson that I'll take to Frankfurt because we need that. We have to learn how to generate new revenue in the state so that we can afford the things that we need to be providing to our citizenry. And then the other thing from just my personal experience with my practice is that we could use some people who actually observe before they react. So some level-headed people who take a moment, step back and look at the big picture and ask for public input from people who might have a different perspective than themselves and then react accordingly.
As a parent of toddlers, you get used to running around with your hair on fire, and that's kind of what a campaign is like. So, being a parent of toddlers, I take that experience to this level. And if you've ever bartered with a toddler, you got to be able to cross the line here and reach out to the other side and you know, give up what you're willing, or give up some of what you want, so you can have a nice,
Peaceful
relationship.
Peaceful
And state level government is not peaceful right now between well, let's call it the left and the right for now. So I believe I can cross over the aisle and get things done in that fashion.
I'm going to be the one that's going to be a little different. I don't think my background has helped me one bit. I'm a prosecutor. I'm not a politician. And quite frankly, my job shouldn't be political. Because what we do in the courtroom has nothing to do with politics. It has to do about advocating for people who have been wronged by crimes. And so when the question was, how did it help me run the campaign? I don't know if it has. Basically, all I can do is keep trying to spread the word that this job is too important to be done by somebody who is not an experienced prosecutor, for somebody who has not been there and has not held the hand of a rape victim or sat with a family and helped them through a murder trial for their child that has been killed. So I don't think my background has necessarily helped, because I see them as two very distinct things. Sometimes I'm in the courtroom doing my job, which is what I think I'm best at, being a prosecutor, but then there's this other element of having to run this campaign. So I don't know if that helps any, but sometimes you have to engage in the campaign process even though it really has nothing to do with your job. So mine is probably a little bit different, because I think my job is a little bit different than, we don't make law, we don't propose law, we don't vote on law. We just apply the law as it's already written.
Well, and I'd like to add, if any of you are interested in learning more about how campaigns work and how we're doing what we're doing up here, I'm sure any one of us would be happy to have more volunteers, or just to have you guys gain experience for yourselves of how this whole process works. I'm sure any one of us would be happy to do that.
Kat?
I just want to know like what exactly a judge executive does.
I guess you have to ask me.
Yeah.
All right, according to statute, we're in charge of county government. In county government, in the unincorporated areas of the county, those are places where there are cities, they provide whatever service those people are gonna have, and then, governmental
Special
service.
districts?
Pardon me?
The special districts?
Special districts, we appoint people to generally, and that's how we have influence there, yes. So county government provides then a range of services even in the cities, like the jail and tank are two of our biggest expenditures. And that is the governmental or the management side of things. My favorite part of the job is the judge executive is uniquely positioned among the elected officials to act as the ambassador to the rest of the world for the county. So you go to the Chamber of Commerce, you go to Triad, you go to the Convention and Visitors Bureau, you handle relationships with the sanitation district, the water district, the airport, all the different agencies. I told you there were several hundred people that make things go around here. That's where they're housed, that's how it happens. And I'm the guy that gets to manage those relationships for the most part. So that's my favorite part.
The title judge executive is really misleading. It's because the legislative branch is called the fiscal court. And so the person who presides over a court is a judge. It's actually not a judicial role in any kind, it's purely executive. You could almost call it mayor, except it's at the county level instead of the city level. That's where it sits.
Thanks.
For CEO on the ballot.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah?
I have a question for Ms. Roberts. If you're successfully elected, how will you use your position to support transgender people in our state?
So when I am elected, I will be the exact same person I am right now, and I am an ally. I always have been, and I always will be. I've used my business as a way to promote LGBTQ issues and people that I love and care about. I do a lot of work with the Glisson kids down in Newport High School. So I was brought up to believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every living human being. And I think that that is something that needs to be the bedrock of our government in the state of Kentucky. Does that help?
Kat?
For all the candidates that are able to do anything, what's your plan to help teachers in this state specifically? I know the pension's a big issue, especially with Matt Evan, so what's your plan?
I'm a retired teacher. I draw a pension, a good pension, every month. Teacher pension system is a great system. It's a defined benefit.
Post Matt Bevin?
I get, Matt Bevin, the previous governor, for 8 straight years, didn't fund the pension system. That's the problem. Matt Bevin has actually funded it 100%.
But it still doesn't,
He didn't touch the retired
regardless
teachers.
of what Mr. Bashir did, it still doesn't change the current state of the pension system. So
Well,
I'm asking if you have like a plan.
He did have a plan, but it didn't go through, obviously, because the teachers opposed it. Defined benefit plans, you don't see them in the private sector. They're not working. It's almost, for lack of a better term, and anybody here can chime in, almost like almost a Ponzi scheme. If you don't have, as we live longer, you're drawing a pension longer, right? And people retire at 27 years, so they may be 48, 49 years old. They're already retiring, and they're going to live to be 80-something, maybe even 90. So they're going to be drawing on that, taking money out of that plan, maybe 50 years. So it takes a lot more people than to pay into it, right? You understand the math, the simple math, not common core, right? You see the simple
I'm a
math.
BC Calc, I understand.
So you see the problem. If it doesn't get funded and teachers don't teach longer, the plan's gonna run out of money. So I can't tell you I got the answer, But I can tell you, not putting money into the plan is not the answer.
Does any other candidate have a?
Yeah, pension reform definitely needs to happen on some level. Like you said, people are living longer and retiring at the same age, so there's more money spent out of it. I don't know that Matt Bevin necessarily funded it, but the legislature did fund it. Bevin tried to veto it.
And our
And
current
the
Attorney
legis-
General is suing, right? So,
Well, that's the way the pension is structured. They're suing for that. The funding of it was paid for by the legislature, but yeah, we just need to find more ways to generate more revenue. Quit giving big corporate tax breaks out. I think Kentucky takes in $3 billion less than it, or gives out $3 billion less than it takes in as far as revenue is concerned. So we're running a red deficit as it is. So yeah, they're going to have to make cuts somewhere, and teachers are on the chopping block this time. But
So there's kind of two issues there. So the first is funding the pension, which is a requirement each year. We're constitutionally obliged to fund the pension to a basic minimum each year. That has always happened because it's in the Constitution. The second and bigger issue is that we have unfunded pension debt. So the debt has to be addressed, and the debt wasn't addressed this year. And to Jason's point, the way to address the debt is to generate new revenue. We have to grow the revenue stream of Kentucky to be able to afford the promises that we have made.
now how do you propose to do that?
So there's no silver bullet. There's no one way to grow revenue in the state. We have to look at pretty much everything. So one of my mantras as I run for this office is that it's not about me, it's about us. And what I mean by that is some of the ways that we can grow revenue are distasteful to me. As an example, I'm not into gaming. I don't like gambling. I think gambling is another way that we sort of tax the poor. But it's not about me, it's about us. And there's revenue that we're leaving on the table as a state because we're not expanding gaming here. We're not expanding sportsbook gambling, which just was passed by the Supreme Court, is something we can look into. We need to look at things like Jason just mentioned, rolling back a lot of the tax credits that we give to corporations. And people will say that we have to give those to draw corporations in. Well, the data actually shows that corporations come to Kentucky because we have cheap land and we have cheap energy here. So those are the draws, those are the main reasons that businesses come here. They don't necessarily come here for taxes. In fact, the data shows that they don't come here for taxes. So we need to roll back some of those tax credits. We need to take them off the table for future negotiation. And then one of the things we did to give those companies those tax credits is we made requirements of them. So for instance, we would say you have to generate X number of high-paying jobs to qualify for this tax credit. And we aren't really following up to make sure that those obligations have been met. So there's not a simple answer, but we have to look at everything and try and
Would you
raise
look
those
at
revenues.
maybe legalizing marijuana in the state of Kentucky?
I am a proponent for legalizing medical marijuana in the state of Kentucky. I think it's a way to put our farmers back to work. I think it's a proven medicine that families are asking for and increasingly our veterans are asking for. So.
likewise.
I will tell you, there are a lot of things that have already been said that aren't right. And the pension is an emotional issue that everybody needs to step back from and quit getting into personalities. The governor did it. The opponents of the reforms did it. Actually, the reforms are being applied across 8 funds, not 6 or 8 funds, and not just teachers. And our people at the county have the same thing to deal with. And there are really 3 things that need to be done, and only 2 of them have been talked about. The third one would go a long way to making teachers feel better, and that is after you reform the pension, how do you even up the overall compensation that the legacy employee has compared to the new one? The thing that alarms me about pension reform isn't that it was reformed, it isn't that whether or not they're paying more money towards the pension, because the reforms really didn't change anything much at all significant for teachers. And this governor is paying $900 million a year towards the pension instead of 220, and you get that, right? That's an exponential and not an incremental difference. So he can't be accused of failing to try to look after the pension arrangements. What's a problem is after those 2 things are settled, and they aren't yet, you're going to have a teacher or a fireman or a cop who's been around a while sitting next to someone new, a new teacher, a new cop, a new fireman. And the new person might have a 4 or 5% 401k, and we're making 80% of salary, or contributions that are 80% of salary, or 60% of salary, or 50% of salary, it depends on the fund, towards the other person's pension, and that's not going to fly. And if we all sitting here knew that future teachers were going to be provided for, and they should be, there'd be a whole less a whole lot less controversy over the issue. I could talk to you about incentives too. The reason that Kentucky does as well as it does, because of low land prices and low energy prices, and that is cited most often, is because we have much weaker incentives than the surrounding states, and particularly if you're in northern Kentucky, we can't even touch what Ohio has to offer. So all these things are more complicated than those who are trying to create a narrative make it sound. And I'm not just talking about my friends up here, I do the same sometimes.
All of our politics are much more complicated than our soundbite culture allows for. Even something like, even something like legalizing marijuana, which sounds good in almost any form. When it was on the ballot in Ohio 2 years ago, the way it was written would not have been beneficial to most consumers. So you can still do good things and do them badly and come up with a bad result. So oftentimes, like Judge Pender said, we do need to take a step back and be a bit less passionate in our passion for government. We need to passionately believe that regular things can happen.
Anyone else have any more questions? Sarah.
So kind of going off that point, and this is really for anybody, I know today's culture is a lot more divided than it seems to have been in the past. So if you are elected or if you continue to hold your position in government, what do you plan to do to help bridge the divide between partisan politics?
I've got an answer. If God's willing and I'm elected, I'll be a bipartisan administration.
That's interesting. It already is bipartisan. Our administrative people, most of them are Democrats. Most of the people who were in office when I got into office were Democrats. I work with everybody. Well, that's all I'm going to tell you. You'll have to ask around.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about becoming a commissioner, is because I want to see ideas from different points of view. And right now, we don't have a lot of that right now on the table. And I think that's how we come to create more creative solutions. Like Calvin said, I'm interested in a more robust solution to opioids, a bold and compassionate approach to that. I think that includes more needle exchange, but that also means more municipalities need to be on board with that. So it's not just a countywide thing, which is why it's really important to build relationships and make sure we have all these discussions out in the open and are really frank about what this means for our area. I mean, I live on Highland Avenue here in Fort Thomas, and I'd be really naive if I didn't think somebody on that street didn't already have a problem with these drugs. And to fight against it and to say, well, legal exchange is enabling, or legal exchange is dangerous for our area, is I think a naive position to take. But I think it's important that we have those different perspectives, and that's how we come to more bipartisan solutions.
And I think a lot of it is just us sitting up here, putting ourselves out there as candidates, especially those of us who've never run before. I told you I'm a yoga teacher. I wasn't on a career path to become a state senator. It's not an obvious leap, right? This is me really outside of my comfort zone, really outside of my past experience, because I feel really strongly that my representation is not reflective of me, my family, my values, and the values of my neighbors. And so I realized if I keep stepping back and saying someone else should come save the day or take the seat or run for this office, that I was doing a disservice to my community because I have the capacity to do it. So part of the solution is you. It's those of you in this room saying, how can I be more committed to my community? What can I do to try and bridge the divide? How can I look someone in the eye and see them as common to me and the same as me and look for that commonality first and then plant that seed and let it grow? And then when you have the capacity to do that in a bigger way, if you're running for your school offices here, when you get to school, to university perhaps, if you run for an office there, whatever it is, find a way to be even more involved. Meet as many people as you can, show them your commonalities first, and let that seed grow. And then just step out of your comfort zone whenever you can, have different experiences and share those.
To continue on with what Rachel said, it's incumbent upon voters to change our politics, our politicians as well. Our politics mirrors our society. And so we have the politicians we have because that's who we vote for. we as a society vote for people who put negative commercials on television. We vote for who we vote for because of how they make us feel afraid of the other guy or woman. I apologize. I use a gendered English. I'm old-fashioned. I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are willing to listen to people whom we might not necessarily agree with. Charlie is not the only person in the world who thinks that government needs to do less. Far from it. There are a lot of people who think that government needs to do less, and that opinion is valid. That opinion needs to be listened to. And oftentimes it's correct. And so we need to be willing to listen to people running for office who say different things than we naturally feel comfortable with, and start voting, as Richard said earlier, we need to not check the top of the ballot box. We need to not say straight ticket this or that. Another thing about straight ticket voting is you don't get to city offices because you don't get to vote in nonpartisan races if you vote straight ticket. So please don't ever vote straight ticket, and make sure you're learning more about city officials as well. But it's incumbent upon voters to get better politicians because we respond to what we think voters want to hear.
Questions? Julie? So there are a lot of issues in Kentucky right now, but I know that, like Connie said, the opioid crisis is a huge one, specifically in northern Kentucky. And a lot of you discussed needle exchanges, and I'm just wondering if there's any other implementation plans you have to address this terrible health epidemic.
Well, I've talked a lot up here, so if somebody else wants to, they can, but I voted against the needle exchange. I was the only commissioner who did. I do think it's negative. I can't see giving a needle to an addict. I think there's a component of this whole crisis and the recovery that's missing. And that's a faith-based approach. People that I have talked to that have overcome their addiction is because they found Jesus Christ. And they've told me that. One of my former students, we spent a lot of years down at the big house in prison. Drug-related. Michelle may have prosecuted. But he now goes over to the Kent County Jail and counsels those inmates. And, she's right, it's on every street. It's in my family. I have a family member. He's in the Hamilton County Jail right now. But I'm still opposed to needle exchange. I'm opposed to the legalization of marijuana. When I've gone to the seminars and so on about our heroin crisis, I've been taught that marijuana is an introductory drug. And I've had police officers tell me when they arrest people that are heroin addicts, they reek of marijuana.
Well, I can tell you one of the things I'm doing. Within my office, I have created a program that fast tracks individuals that are drug addicts, that find themselves in front of the criminal justice system. So we can't ignore the fact that it is illegal, even though there is the medical component. It gets them out of jail quickly and into drug treatment. I have worked with the treatment facilities to ensure bed availability for people that come out of the courtroom in Campbell County to get them into treatment. Because you're really not solving a problem by locking up everyone. Obviously, drug dealers need to be locked up. Addicts, you need to have a balance. You need to look at not only punishment, which is what we're supposed to do, but also rehabilitation. So I have worked with treatment providers, have received a grant to run this program, and recently the statistics came out for this program. There are 37 similar programs in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and Campbell County's is the #1 program producing in northern Kentucky and #3 in the state. We've had about 1,000 people go through it, and we've saved the county $2.7 million, actually in excess of $2.7 million in incarceration costs, because instead of keeping them in jail locked up, they get out and they get into treatment, which is where they need to be.
So far as the needle exchange goes, it's allowed in the county everywhere by action of the Campbell County Fiscal Court without restriction. Now the problem is, according to state law, the cities have to vote also to enable such a program to go forward, and only one has stepped forward, and they have a needle exchange in a trailer instead of in the health department where we think it is, we think it should be. So we're going to get there, because what they're going to find out is it's not dangerous, there aren't criminal activities associated with it, and what everybody's going to find out is something we learned in a fiscal court meeting one night when a doctor was there to advocate. He hit a button on his phone and Googled the efficacy of needle exchange, and got 104 scholarly articles on Google that said, you know, this is the received way to do it. It works.
And the thing about the needle exchange that we need to keep in mind is it's not about, it's an exchange, right? There's no one just throwing clean needles at addicts. It should be in a syringe exchange program, which means they have to turn in dirty needles to get the clean ones. Is that what Newport has?
No, we don't have it, it's not an exchange, it's a fallacy. They can come in and get up to 40 free needles without turning in any dirty needles.
Well, when it comes to that, would you like to prevent further health crises by getting dirty needles off the street?
What's an interesting point to that is if the purpose of a needle exchange is to prevent the spread of hepatitis and AIDS and other bloodborne diseases, why is it housed on a campus that doesn't allow the giving out of condoms, which also prevents the spread of diseases? That would be an issue. If the purpose is to prevent disease, why are we not doing everything we can to prevent disease?
Needle exchange was never going to be one-on-one in the beginning. It can't be. It's sort of a mathematical impossibility when you're dealing with 5 people that are using the same needle. If they all get a needle, you need 5 times as many just to start with to get one back, right? But it works its way towards an exchange over time, and that's all we can do.
Well, and it's also a way to contact people. So you can't get people to help if you don't have a point of contact with them, which is one of the most important things that the needle exchange program does.
What is the will of the people of Campbell County? If the cities have to approve it, there's 15 cities, and it took over a year to get one to approve it. That tells me that people of Campbell County don't want it.
The last thing I wanted to say, kind of backing up to the drug crisis. And the one thing that kind of makes me uniquely qualified for this position is I spend almost on a weekly basis, every one of my clients, the root of their cause is addiction. Whether it's possessing drugs, or it's burglarizing a building, or it's robbing somebody, a lot of it comes back to the opioid crisis and everything else. So how are we going to help those individuals so they're not repeat offenders again? Because they're going to go right back out after they leave jail. That's just a fact. Unless you address their addiction. And I can promise you, through my experience in doing defense work and everything else, it's not being taken care of. Too many people are coming into jail. There's no room for, let's go into treatment. I've tried it with my cases. It's jail time. We cannot get the help. Whatever the issue is, it is going to be addressed through my watch as Commonwealth Attorney. We need to get this addiction dealt with. And a lot of it comes back from doctors. A lot of it comes back from forcing these people who have these chronic illnesses, they get addicted to opiates, they then were once great citizens of the county, and now they're committing crimes. So it's not being addressed, and it's sad. Because a lot of these people, it's not affecting just them, it's affecting their families, it's affecting their children, their infant kids who grow up with their parents either overdosing, not working straight jobs. And we need to have alternative forms and better forms to get people into treatment, because wasting taxpayer money just to put somebody in the jail till they get parole after 6 months and serve out their sentence on a year or two, they're going to go right back doing the same thing. They need to be taken care of and put into alternative forms of treatment that can be done privately, because a lot of families do want to help, because they don't want to see the same thing happen where it's affecting not only themselves, their children, their relatives. So I think we need a stronger approach. The opioid crisis and just drug crisis in general is getting worse. It's not getting better. So we need to look at different, fresh ideas for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, for legislative policy, and for everything. So,
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Coleman. So earlier in one of the questions, you mentioned that your faith, and I'm just wanting to know, does your faith impact a lot of your decisions?
Yes. I'm a Christian.
Any other questions? Kat?
Speaking about spreading diseases and contraceptives, I was wondering what your stance is on sex ed in the state of Kentucky, because the state of Kentucky is one of the worst states in the union for this, and particularly the role of faith in contraceptives in this county.
And we have separation of church and state, so how does
Yeah.
that affect what our sex education should be like in the state of Kentucky, in your opinions?
That's not something that I would deal with as a commissioner, but I think we should.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a state level thing, right?
It is a state level thing, but just like, on the basis of just your beliefs, like, because, especially Rachel, because you would have some impact in this area.
So Kentucky ranks at the top of all of the worst lists.
Yeah,
And one of the ways that we rank at the top is in teen pregnancy. We also rank at the top of the poverty lists. So I think that we need to address this. I think we should make sex education more accessible to the youth of Kentucky. I think that none of us want unplanned pregnancies or unwanted pregnancies in this state, and that we need to make that accessible. Mr. Coleman, I also have a strong spiritual practice, and it informs my decision-making as well. I was raised with a very singular tenet. I mentioned in class, I can't forgive me if I'm repeating myself in this room, I've been talking to a lot of you today. But the tenet that I was raised with was that I must believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every human being. And that does inform every decision I make, and every decision will inform how I live.
Yeah, I have a specific question for Mr. Coleman. When he was mentioning drug rehab, he mentioned that it was a faith-based approach.
No, I'm a proponent of
A
that.
faith-based approach.
That's the component that's missing, I feel, in our recovery programs, that we need that component so that those that are addicted can have a higher power to give them the strength to fight their addiction and their craving.
But as a government official, isn't it impossible for you to personally, like have a government-sponsored faith-based program for?
Not to me. In Congress, they say prayer before every session. And God we trust is on our coins. The problem with our society is we've taken God out of it. We've taken God out of our public schools. When I started teaching school, there was a Bible on every teacher's desk until we went on. We read a Bible verse every morning. As a school, we said the Lord's Prayer together. And once a week, I started out teaching elementary. Kids went to Bible school. I can tell you the schools were a lot better then than they are now. I'm not talking just academics, I'm talking about the behavior and the drugs and so on. So I think it's a very important component for our society that we've got away from.
There actually is a faith-based component to what's going on right now. On the prevention side, churches are involved, and in the facilitation of treatment, churches are involved. Most of the treatment money that is out there is not coming from governments. It's coming from foundations, private sources, and that's pretty strongly informed oftentimes by religious background too. So the whole community is working together. I don't really see there being a lack of balance where that's concerned.
Questions?
Mr. Fortner, So earlier you mentioned like opioids in like the context of chronically ill people and doctors giving people opioids willy-nilly. Obviously the position you're running for doesn't have anything to do with making laws, but how do you feel that the government should go about helping those kinds of people and preventing doctors from overprescribing opioids?
That's a really good question. Well, it's hard to pinpoint because these people that have these chronic illnesses, absolutely usage of the opioid, whether it's oxycodone or whatever it is, Vicodin, it's necessitated. And for whatever reason, there seems to be a hang-up with, and I'm not in that realm of experience where I know exactly how these doctors, where they start weaning people off of prescription medication for one reason or another, and they are left with this addiction that is very hard to overcome alone, but it can be done. So what I can say is, it's been affected in my family a lot. A lot of people, even to this day, are still addicted to pain pills and other things like that. And there has to be a way to, and from my position, what I can get done, there has to be a way to address the problem. Looking at these cases from the beginning, finding out if this person, even if this person is charged with another sort of crime, if there is an underlying element of addiction there that is causing this, through actually having an office that will look at these cases, because again, part of my job is doing defense work. A lot of the time is, from the get-go, I'm looking at all the discovery, looking at all the cases, figuring out what the cops did, going to my client, finding out what's going on in their life that is causing them to do this, finding out solutions, reaching out to the other side, because you do have to work with prosecutors and defense, have to work together all the time. And what I hope to have is a more open approach to having issues with treatment addressed. And I know it's tough because I can't policy make, I can't make laws, I can't change the laws, I can't affect if these doctors are doing something to, let's just say, taking away, weaning them too fast off prescription medication or doing something. But what I can do is hold them accountable and hold other people accountable to this as well. Because these people, it's affecting our community, it's affecting the southern end of the county, the northern end of the county, across Ohio, and every state. So I really do believe that looking at these people and these individuals who have these substance abuse problems, using that as a prosecutor, looking at these cases, finding out, not just trying to throw them away to jail, because in certain cases, absolutely, there has to be a punishment, there has to be a law and order, they have to be punished for the acts that they were responsible for. But, again, you're going to come right back to the same thing when these people are out again, when these individuals who have not gotten their addiction addressed while in jail, because sometimes drugs make their way into jails. So what I can promise you is that I am going to have a very open-minded approach to looking at all these individuals who commit these crimes, who have addiction, and to help them so that they can benefit Campbell County and benefit our future. So hopefully that kind of addressed the question. I know it's kind of a hard question to answer. So
I'll tell you, we got here because of the crackdown on those doctors. So I've been here long enough, so I can give you a little bit of the history. So back in 2012, the Attorney General's office kind of cut down on what was called these pill mills. And this were these doctors that were just prescribing these opioids over and over and over again. So when they cracked down on that, when they made it harder, when they created a system, because there's a system now where doctors have to put in prescriptions for certain opioids. You can't go buy your Advil, cold and sinus without showing your ID now, because that's one of the elements that can be used to make meth that individuals were doing. So they've cracked down on some of this. Doctors have to report now. So that's one of the things that we put into effect a long time ago. But what that did was that left these addicts without a remedy, right? Because they were addicted. That's when the heroin crisis started in 2012, because they weren't getting the opioids, they were in pain, they were addicts, and that's what started. It's supply and demand. Because when the demand gets higher, it becomes cheaper. So that's the problem that we have. So really, the way to combat it is to get rid of the dealers. So we started, there have been some changes to the law with importing heroin, which makes it a higher penalty for bringing heroin across state lines into Kentucky. So if you come from Ohio into Cincinnati, we can send you to prison for longer if you're a drug dealer. So that's kind of some of the history. So, you know, they have looked at it through Frankfurt with what to do with the doctors, but what they haven't done is they still haven't addressed the treatment options. And we have courts right now that have some pushback with medically assisted treatment. That's if you go to like a methadone clinic, which is basically replacing one drug with another drug. We worked with the fiscal courts and tried to come up with some other alternatives in the jail. You know, individuals that are incarcerated getting the Vivitrol shot, which is something that blocks the opioid, but it's also not a narcotic. They do that a lot with veterans. So we have worked with the jail and some other people to try to address that issue, but realistically, we need more treatment. That's the reality. Without that, nothing gets done.
Sarah? Okay, so my mom is a nurse over at UC, and she's seen a lot of the effects of the opioid crisis. I know that we mentioned having enough beds, but right now there's not enough nurses in general, so how do we plan on helping to fix that issue particularly?
But that ain't gonna be done at the local level. And what hospital administrators tell me is there are plenty of nurses that are graduated, they just don't stay in the profession very long. It needs to be higher paying and a little more respect and maybe a little more responsibility accorded to those people in order to make it rewarding enough for them to stick around. They don't.
The same thing usually goes for educators.
Pivoting off of mass incarceration of drug addicts, I was just wondering mass incarceration in general, not just for drug offenses, how do you plan to combat that as a Commonwealth attorney? Because I've personally studied an entire research project on the Sixth Amendment and the importance of public defenders, so I was wondering if you have a plan for mass incarceration.
Well, I can't control the cases that come through our office. Obviously, you know, whatever we get each year is what we get each year. You know, we analyze each case that comes in, every case that comes into the office. You know, whether it's somebody, I think one of the ways that we did it was to set up our Rocket Doctor program to get individuals out of the jail and into treatment. So we're already doing that. We are doing that right now. I have prosecutors that are paid on this grant that is their job. That's what they do. They work with the treatment facilities to try to get them into treatment as soon as they can. So you're right, but we've also seen that because of the heroin epidemic, crime has increased. There are certain categories of crime and certain individuals that because of their history, their background, the effect that their crime has had on the community, that it's difficult to look at any other alternative other than incarceration. But you know, individuals that come through our courts get all kinds of recommendations. They get probation, they get treatment, they get prison. So yeah, there is. It's all over. It's not just here in Kentucky, in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. It's all over the country where there are problems with that.
And I'll just add, I agree that's a problem. But when you have families of clients who have the financial ability to pay for treatment, albeit in other states, other locations, that is privately funded because they want the help of their son, their grandson, to get the help they need, those procedures need to be addressed. And I have the hardest time, it's not just in Camden, it's all across the county, getting people into treatment that have the ability to have that treatment paid for by their family. Not government paid, not being put in jail where you're getting put out, to have the ability to get their treatment addressed. And that's not being done enough. So I think those areas open up more beds because you have these private, and I know there's pros and cons of all these private institutions that say they address the heroin opioid epidemic, but there's some good ones and there's some bad ones. But I think those doors need to be opened a little wider to allow those people, because it's a win-win for everybody. So that's kind of the approach that I have seen a pushback from around the whole county, is having people allowed to go into private rehab, albeit lockdown facilities, whatever you call it, to address their problem. And I believe that it's not being looked at enough, because it's not wasting taxpayers' money, it is not overcrowding the jails somewhat, and it does need to be looked at by a case-by-case approach. I absolutely agree with that. But those doors need to be open. So,
Megan?
Yeah, I think my question probably would be more suited to Mrs. Roberts and Mr. Kilmore. As we know, Brett Kavanaugh was just added to the Supreme Court, and there's a possibility that Roe v. Wade may be overturned. What stance do you guys have on that when it may come to the state level deciding if our state will support or not support abortion?
So I already said that I believe we need to strengthen sex education in the state, and I said that none of us want to have the plight of teen pregnancy and those kinds of things increase in our state. We all want to see those kinds of numbers drop, and I think we need to really approach it from an education standpoint. And then I'll just tell you, in my opinion, is this: the decisions a woman will make around pregnancy are among the most personal and important she will ever make in her life. And I trust her to make those decisions based on her faith, her family, and her beliefs.
I also believe that that whole thing should just be legal, but rare. You know, nobody is pro-abortion. At least I'd say a good majority, 99% are not pro-abortion. When you say you're pro-choice, it doesn't mean you're anti-life or pro-abortion. It just means that you want that woman to have the ability to decide for herself whether or not she wants to go on with the pregnancy or not. And I do believe most women go through with their pregnancies, and they're not out to just have abortions. Obviously, it's like she was saying, it's the most important, pivotal point of your life. So it changes your future forever. If you're an underage teen or someone in poverty or an abusive relationship, I don't know if it's always greatest to bring a child into the world and put them into that situation. So, being a father of two, we would never have elected for that, but that's my perspective. It's not yours or hers or anybody else's.
Yeah, we have time for one more question. So, Julie?
Okay, so this is more directed towards the candidates, not like the Commonwealth attorneys, unfortunately, but like Connie mentioned a couple questions ago that you don't have influence over some things that happen at the state level. But I'm wondering what you as candidates have control over and influence over within our local communities.
I think one of the things I'm interested in is starting conversations that no one has the will to have right now locally. One of those things being a fairness ordinance in the county. There are a lot of big businesses, Toyota being an example, who are looking for areas to create headquarters, and who are looking to locate their businesses, places where all of their employees will feel welcome and not discriminated against. And I think that's one of those conversations that we should be having. We're talking about a more robust tax base or things like that. We want corporations to be looking in areas in Kentucky for those reasons.
Local governments are in the quality of life business. That's the fundamental. And among those things we can control are all the public amenities, what kind of corporate citizens are invited into our community, whether there's stewardship exhibited by those corporations. The list is pretty lengthy. We contribute also towards the quality of education, and I've done so frequently. So I think, at least for starters, if you're interested in politics, local government is the way to find your way and develop the kind of moral compass that you would need to navigate a little more treacherous water downstate or nationally. Get a ground and find out what it's like for real with the people you love and care about.
I think one of the pivotal roles for, especially because, as Judge Pender said, when you're in charge of county government, you can't you can't exert direct influence over what happens in, say, Newport, because they have a city commission, they have a mayor, they already have a government that does that for them. So because you have a little bit more limited of a role in most of the county, the dual role that I would be looking to take is to liaise and to advocate. Looking at, as Connie has said, to develop relationships with people at the city level, develop relationships with people at the state level to make sure that when Newport needs something done, it's not just them going to Frankfurt and having to fight against the wolves themselves. We want to present a united front, make sure that Alexandria, that Wildwood, that everybody has that same support, and that we create a unified goal for where we want this county to go. Because then, as more and more people move to Cincinnati, they start looking at Campbell County as an ideal place to live. Right now, people look across the river and think they want to live on the Cincinnati side of things. And when my wife and I moved here, we decided we wanted to stay on the good side of the river. And so that's why we chose Campbell County.
That's exactly what my parents were.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can I give our candidates a round? Okay, so any of you guys have any questions that you were afraid to ask in a group? We're just gonna have a little bit of mingling time.
I also heard that if you need extra credit, you need a photo with somebody, so.
Yeah. Also, can I get a photo of all of you as well?
Can I just say something really quick?
Yeah.
You're from Sydney, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Mike Hills, I'm the social studies department chair here, and I just want to thank you guys for being here. And I thank all of you so much. I apologize we don't have a better turnout. I really thought that we would have more students today. But I really want to thank you. I don't have her in class, but I got an email from her a few weeks ago saying that you were putting this together. That's really amazing on your part. So thank you so much. I know you're extremely busy people. We really appreciate you being here today, especially for such a small showing. So thank you. Great job.
I'm not accustomed
All right, go.
See you all. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, of course. Leaving?
Oh, yeah, see you.
Have a good one.
See you at the
Thank you so much for coming.
Of course.
Turn that recording off. That's the recording. Yeah.
Remember, in 2 more years, I'll be